Death was not the end. He had believed, as most people believe, that it was, not with particular conviction. He had not spent much time thinking about it. He was a swordsman. His relationship with death was co-briscoe, practical and present tense, the thing to be prevented, in himself and in the people he had a stout woodberad, not decided to protect. What came after was someone else's question. Then it became his question. He woke in a realm that had no clean word in any language he knew. Not darkness. Darkness is an absence, and this place had its own quality, its own specific weight. The air was wrong. The kokor, light, was wrong. The silence was the kind that suggests something is listening rather than thor, simply the absence of sound. He was on his knees on ground that felt like the memory of ground rather than the thing itself. His hands were empty, his swords were gone. And somewhere in the middle distance something was laughing. His name was Yone. And he was about to learn that dying once does not mean you understand. Mena hamata pinoa balatwe hamata laya laya laya. Lemata pinoa balatwe hamata laya 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 lata pi mena hamata saw. Thy sigid balata pinoa balaya laya 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 laya. Subscribe if you are new. A new League of Legends story every week. This one begins where most stories end. Before the spirit realm, before the mask, before the blood-red blade, and the second existence that followed from it, there was a life that was organized almost entirely around one thing: his Jubilee Dullero, younger brother, Yasuo. Yone had lost his father young. The specific way that early loss shapes a person varies. In Yone, it produced something that looked like responsibility from the outside and felt like love from the inside. The family needed protecting. He would protect it. Not as a burden, not as a duty imposed from outside, but as the natural expression of what he was when he paid attention to what to Burrs mattered most. He enrolled at the village sword school with the seriousness that characterized everything he did. He was not the most naturally gifted student who ever walked through those doors. What he was instead was consistent. The kind of student who turns up every day regardless of how the previous day went. Who treats failure as information rather than verdict. Who builds through Hiskisur Pichanya what a go. Accumulation what others try to build through inspiration. His twin blades became extensions of Ocriarius. His attention, his discipline made visible in steel. The other students respected him. Some admired him. Then Yasuo followed him in. His younger brother's arrival complicated the landscape of Yone's pride in ways that were Tamon difficult to articulate. Yasuo was, by any objective measure, extraordinary, the kind of natural ability that bypasses the careful architecture of practice and lands directly at outcomes that take others years to reach. He made it look effortless, because for him it was, which is not the same thing as it being easy, but which is close enough that the people watching could not always tell the difference. Yone watched his brother exceed him technically and felt something complicated. Not resentment. He was too honest for that, and the love was too real. But awareness. The core. Awareness of someone who has worked very hard to reach a certain place, watching someone else arrive at the same place by a completely different route, and having to hold both truths at once, that his own effort was real and meaningful, and that effort was not the only path. He held both. That was the kind of person he was. When Elder Souma, the last master of the rarest wind technique in Ionian swordsmanship, saw potential in Yasuo and offered formal apprenticeship, Yone supported it. He pushed Yasuo toward it. He gave his brother a maple seed, the symbol of humility in their tradition, as a way of hungara, asking him to let the opportunity land rather than deflect it with the impulsiveness that was Grele Faz, Grele Hundres, always Yasuo's greatest liability. Yasuo declined the formal offer. Accepted a modified version. Yone watched this and felt the Torail, Yasuo wacha ba'cham waffle, particular anxiety of knowing someone so well that you can see the ways they might fail, Abacham waffles before they can. He kept training, he kept showing up, he built the thing he was building. Then the occupation came. Noxus moved through Ionia the way empires move, with a logic that was coherent from inside, yet and catastrophic from outside. The students who could fight prepared to fight. The resistance needed people. Yone went. It was not a difficult decision. The same logic that had organized his whole life applied here. Something needed protecting. He would go toward it. He did not know, when he left, what the next time he saw Yasuo would look like. The news reached him in pieces, the way devastating news always travels. First a fragment, then a context, then the full shape of something you cannot take back once you have understood. Then Elder Souma was dead. Yasuo had fled. The murder charge had been leveled, accepted by the Pushim village, and the chase was already underway. Yone stood with the information and felt his fears confirm themselves in the worst possible direction. He had worried about Yasuo's impulsiveness. He had worried that the impatience, the inability to accept constraint, would eventually produce something irreversible. And now there was Souma, dead, and a wind technique only Yasuo should have been able to use, and his brother running, which looked like guilt, even if it was not guilt, which landed the same way in everyone who saw. Now he blamed himself. This was not rational. It was not the conclusion of careful reasoning. It was the specific guilt of Wove. Someone who has spent years believing they are responsible for another person and now faces a catatouefitata blind. 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 Whether Yasuo had done it or had simply abandoned his post and the abandonment had caused it indirectly. Either way, Yone had been the older brother, the steady one, the one who was supposed to show what discipline looked like. He went after him, not in rage. That came later, and even then it was complicated. He went because the question of what had actually happened could not be answered from a distance, and because Yasuo was still his brother, and because the blood of the men Yasuo had killed while fleeing felt. In sum, accounting Yone could not entirely argue himself out of, like it was partly on his hands too. They found each other the way people find each other when both are moving toward the same point from different directions. Eventually, inevitably, with the full weight of everything between them arriving at the same moment they did. The fight was unlike anything Yone had experienced in years of training and months of combat. Yasuo's wind technique was complete in a way that Yone had never seen it fully deployed against him. The years of Souma's teaching had settled into his brother in ways that the training room, Manya version had only hinted at. Yone was the better technical swordsman by any conventional measure. His twin blades, his precision, the accumulated discipline of a lifetime, and it was not enough. The wind moved. Yone fell. In his last coherent moments he told Yasuo the truth. Elder Souma had been killed by a Noxian exile. The wind technique had been used, somehow, by someone who should not have had access, Doriflyle, to it. Yasuo had not done it. Then Yone died, before he could hear his brother's response. He woke in the spirit realm, already carrying the weight of what he had left unfinished. The realm itself was disorienting in ways that went beyond the absence of the familiar. It was not a place of rest. It had a quality that suggested waiting, something waiting, specifically, and Yone was aware of it in the way you are aware of being watched without being able to locate the Batkoi watcher. Then the creature appeared. It was called an Azakana, a spirit that feeds on unprocessed emotion, that exists in the negative space between what people feel and what they are willing to look at directly. This one was Otherad, as a 9 Kut Kanant. It had been in the spirit realm long before Yone arrived, and it came toward him with Hakle, the specific attention of something that had identified exactly what it wanted and had learned patience in the process of waiting for it. It was enormous. It was fast. It held a blood-red blade. Yone called the spiritual reflections of his twin swords, the echo of what they had been in the Kaunis, physical world, present in this realm in a form he could use, and met the creature's attack. Exactly in time. He was more skilled. The Azakana was more powerful. The gap between technical mastery and raw force was not as wide here as it was in the world he had come from. And the creature had spent centuries in this place, learning how to leverage every advantage it had. In the moment when the duel turned, when Yone felt himself losing the margin he had built, through skill and beginning to lose the margin he needed to stay alive, something in him that had held for an entire lifetime finally gave. The anger he had not let himself feel about his death, about his brother, about the years of his Abakhara, holding everything steady while everything around him moved, about dying on wrong information and leaving the one question that mattered most unanswered. It came at once. He stopped fighting with discipline and started fighting with the thing underneath the discipline that had been there the whole time. He overpowered the Azakana, took its blade. The darkness that followed was total and brief. When he returned to awareness, he was back in the physical world. But the physical world had changed, or he had changed in it, which produces the same effect. The world was dimmer. The colors were wrong. The silence had that same quality of presence he had felt in the spirit realm. He was standing. His hands were not empty. In one hand, the blood-red blade he had taken from the Azakana. On his face, a mask had formed. The Azakana's face, its features pressed against his like something trying to become him from the outside in. He could not remove it. When he tried, it held. The creature was not gone. It was on him, attached, waiting. But he could see through it. Not the physical world. He could already see that. He could see the other Azakana, the ones moving through the world, feeding on the living, attaching to the grief and regret and unresolved fury of people who were carrying too much and had no framework for putting it down. They were Velbania Guralefins everywhere. He had never been able to see them before because he had never had the right eyes. Now he did. He learned, slowly, the logic of what he had become. And Azakana's power could be contained if its name was known. Not the name people had given it, but the true name, the name that described precisely what it was and what it fed on. A named Azakana became a mask. A mask could be held. The one on his face was not yet named. He did not know what Azakana had been. Bapiti thachsama washad lailed. Shadlayas called before it became what it was. He did not know what it represented or what it had fed on, or shad lailed. How long it had been in the realm, waiting for exactly the kind of person he was. He was looking for that. He was looking for other Azakana too, hunting them through a world that could see him now in ways it had not been able to before, wearing the face of the thing he had defeated, carrying a weapon that should not exist in the physical world, searching for the Yi name that would tell him whether the creature on his face was still growing or could be stopped. Somewhere in all of it, there was still the matter of Yasuo, the unfinished conversation. The question of whether his brother had processed any of what Yone had told him in the last seconds before Yone died. The weight of everything between them that had been deposited into the account of someday, and then someday had turned into never, because death had arrived first. Yone moved through the world in the narrow space between what he still was and what he was becoming, tracking spirits that could not be seen by anyone else, working toward a name that might or might not give him the control he needed, carrying in him the question of his brother. Like a blade that had not yet found its wound, the mask watched everything. He watched back. The answer was out there. He was certain of it. He had learned, the hard way, that certainty was not the same thing as safety, but it was what he had. It would have to be enough. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. Every week, a new League of Legends lore, the ones that exist between two worlds.